The Rothschild dynasty was one of the richest and most fascinating families in history, and so has been the subject of many conspiracy theories. It is sometimes hard to tell what's true or false about their great wealth and its secrets. In this video, we shall trace down the beginnings of this famous Jewish family and analyze how they accumulated one of mankind's largest fortunes, while facing anti-Semitism that was running wild. Our journey starts in medieval Europe, at the 10th century, when Christianity had become the most widespread religion all over the continent. This religious dominance significantly affected politics and created a close connection between governance and ecclesiastical authorities. The marginalized groups like the Jews who did not share Christian faith predominantly experienced major challenges. The Jews, who had been on the European continent for several centuries, were increasingly isolated and persecuted. They sought refuge in parts of modern-day Germany that were part of the Holy Roman Empire then. In fact, this was often a false hope since empire's policies mirrored wider prejudices within society during that period, thus making life difficult for Jewish communities. There were Jews who had to live in ghettos in many cities of the Holy Roman Empire, and Frankfurt is no exception. Until 1462, Jews of Frankfurt lived only at Judengasse, Jewish alley, a narrow street outside the city walls. A crowded neighborhood where houses were packed closely together was this area, hence its special character and isolation. Instead of traditional house numbers, buildings had specific signs so as not to include them into general urban life. One memorable sign was the red shield, Rothschild in German, that showed that the Rothschild family had lived there since about 1528. These ghettos exhibited social and economic limitations on Jews, while also providing evidence of divisions within society, thus illustrating complex dynamics of faith, power, and identity in medieval Europe. Like many Jewish families at that time, the Rothschild family made their name in finance, prohibited by Christians due to religious bans on usury. Inadvertently, these limitations provided an environment for Jews to prosper as moneylenders and financiers during medieval times. The Rothschilds established a dynasty that would be carried on through generation with their outstanding experience in financial services and lending. By mid-18th century, Mayer Rothschild took over the business, focusing on currency speculations and numismatics. His collection not only showed his sharpness, but also caught the attention of wealthy aristocrats within Holy Roman Empire, including Crown Prince Wilhelm of Hesse, who wielded much influence. The year 1769 saw a blossoming relationship between Mayer Rothschild and Wilhelm that would forever change the course of their family. Acknowledging Mayer's abilities for banking, Wilhelm entrusted him with many financial tasks, which included more than just trading coins. The ultimate trust culminated in 1785 when Wilhelm was crowned Wilhelm I of Hesse and named Mayer as his court Jew. The office was significant since it enabled Rothschild to administer the finances of European aristocracy, which had its advantages and disadvantages. Jewish financiers like Mayer were often given protection and sometimes titles since their conditions were full of intricacies emanating from power struggles intertwined with money during that time. The Rothschilds handled matters concerning money expertly, not only consolidating their wealth, but also making themselves important figures within Europe's political and economic systems who will be remembered in history for ages to come. A major test of Mayer Rothschild's talent at handling finances was in 1806 when Napoleon had Hesse-Homburg's reigning prince, Wilhelm, flee Napoleon and left his huge fortune in grave danger. However, Mayer had kept preparing for such a turmoil as part of his long-term vision. In 1798, he had sent one of his 5 sons, Nathan Mayer Rothschild, to London to set up a currency business similar to his own in Frankfurt. This foresight turned out to be immensely helpful because it enabled Mayer to quickly transfer Wilhelm's assets to London, where they could be used to loan more money to the British monarchy. This maneuver not only helped maintain the prince's riches, but also, in a roundabout way, funded Britain's war against Napoleon, thus explaining how the Rothschilds were able to capitalize on Europe's political instability in such an effective manner. Mayer's fortunes reached their peak when he passed on in 1812. His investments would dramatically alter the face of European financing. To diversify the business, he involved his sons to play different parts, and Nathan stayed in London to anchor the Rothschild in Britain's financial market. At the same time, the oldest brother took over the management of the Frankfurt division, while three more brothers chose the most significant European cities to open their own branches in Paris, Vienna, and Naples. Nonetheless, arriving at the geographical distance, they commonly utilized resources and information that allowed them to advance loans to aristocrats and governments. Some of their strategic financial relations were banking facilities availed to people like Leopold I of Belgium and Francis II, the last Holy Roman Emperor. By 1818, the discrete achievements of all of the five brothers were rewarded when all of them were bestowed with the noble title of barons that promoted all of them to nobility, and thus, the Rothschilds became one of the most renowned banking dynasties in history. Banking continued to dominate the Rothschild family's fortune in the 19th century, and they became outstanding financial players, extending crucial credit to governments. This move enabled them to reap from the social conflict that characterized most overthrows of dynastic regimes across Europe. The banking empire that BNP Paribas has grown into today actually started its journey in Paris during the 1800s, with the value ramping up from just $5 million in 1820 to $500 million by 1850. This unprecedented growth was a sign of the economic versatility and the capacity to maintain national economies, as the IMF authority for today's world. The Rothschilds managed to become the irreplaceable link of the world economy, regulating governments' activities and stabilizing currencies while receiving impressive revenues. Besides the banking business, the Rothschilds made several good private investments that played a crucial role in enhancing their role and power in the economy business. The desire to expand their business outside the simply spirits business was realized in 1868 when they purchased one of the oldest and most recognized wine estates for France. Their investment policy went on changing with huge stakes in vital infrastructure projects. In 1875, they bought a stake in Suez Canal, which gave them the control on stranglehold on more important trade routes. In addition, in 1883, they moved into the oil market and directly supported the sunk costs of the first large European oil well, thus openly entering the battle with Rockefeller's monopoly in the United States. Also, they had giant holdings in De Beers, a monopoly in diamond business, and Rio Tinto, among the largest mining firms, demonstrating that they affected the overall performance of different markets around the globe. From these leveraged investment opportunities, the Rothschild family not only created wealth for themselves, but also probably influenced the course of economies in the era in which they lived. The 20th century was a difficult period for that mighty family of Barons Rothschild came into power and riches during the middle of the 19th century. Slump started with the cessation of the Naples branch in 1900, which was the first severe loss for the vast empire created by the family. The German branch had their own problems also, as the heirs have continued the production of 11 daughters without a son, which resulted in the division of their wealth and ultimate disappearance of their grand wealth. This trend of decline going on, especially for the Austrian branch, which was effectively wiped out when Nazi Germany invaded and annexed Austria in March 1938. The political change eventuated in the refuge of the banking of the Rothschilds and the consequent quick sale of what was once an enormous banking house, a mere shadow of what was its original value, and a very touching incident too in the career of a family that had once been the incarnation of banking strength and solvency. Unfortunately, after the World War II, the French Rothschilds started deepening, but were able to recreate some of the branches of the business. However, in 1981, the French government passed a nationalization policy that affected their bank as well as weakened the family power over the business even more. By the end of the 20th century, Rothschild's fortune was in decline, and the once powerful banking house was reduced to only its English branch. Some blame this depreciation to the political and economic instabilities that characterized the 20th century, while others saw this as a reminder of the uncertainty that even the successful of all times, the Medici's family, were not immune to, despite the fact that the family was one of the most famous in history. The Rothschild family, that at one point was extremely wealthy and powerful, has lost much of its power and wealth over the years. Nominally, this family was in the banking and financial business, and given this huge family made an imprint in Europe and beyond, with their presence in the banking and finance sector having made a tremendously large difference. However, today, their holding in the financial environment is significantly less compared to several decades ago. A look at Forbes' billionaires list will show one that the first Rothschild mentioned is not even associated with the original banking family. However, their money earned mainly come from an asset management company, which deals with the management of other people's money rather than having direct control of huge sums of money. This decline becomes a sign of the fact observed in the globalization procedure in many families with upper social statuses, in which the task of preserving the necessary capital resources and achieving sustainable success is almost impossible to solve. Statistics also show that about 90% of the rich families are likely to end up broke by the third generation, and the Rothschilds are no different. This change of generation often raises a gap between the next generation and the worth that has been built by the previous generation. The youth who has been brought up in affluence becomes worldly and does not understand the value of money. Thus, the next generation is unable to handle the fortune well, so it does not grow. In this Sachs's analytical narrative of capitalism, the Rothschild family also demonstrates the contorted relationships of preserving wealth and wealth's difficulties. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. A big thank you to all my patrons for supporting this channel. We'll see each other again in 2 weeks. Until then, stay smart.